Welcome to the Education and Empowerment Podcast. In this show, our hosts explore success and advancement through education by interviewing today's top leaders in the fields of education, business, and technology in order to provide insight into what it really takes to succeed. This show is brought to you by ForStay, a SaaS-enabled online booking marketplace for student and intern housing. ForStay provides turnkey, all-in-one cloud-based accommodation software solutions for colleges, universities, and organizations. Learn more at offcampus.forstay.com and landlords.forstay.com. All right, let's get into the show.
Welcome to Education and Empowerment Podcast. This is your host, Bakhtiar Soyev, and in this episode, I'm bringing you two wonderful leaders in English and language travel industry, Cheryl Delk-Le Good and Haviva Parnes. Cheryl Delk-Le Good has been active in international education for more than 25 years and has served as EnglishUSA's Executive Director since 2015. She has served multiple leadership positions during her career, including President of EnglishUSA, Communications and Promotions Director for UCIEP and IEP Network Leader for the International Enrollment Management Knowledge Community for NAFSA, and Commissioner Treasurer for the Commission on English Language Program Accreditation. For 15 years, Cheryl has served as Director and Faculty of Intensive English Program at Georgia State University. Prior to moving to Atlanta, she taught at Western Michigan University and Michigan State University. She has authored 2 ESL textbooks and has conducted multiple program and curriculum reviews nationally and internationally. Cheryl earned her bachelor's from Illinois Wesleyan University and master's degrees in French and TESOL at Michigan State University. Haviva Parnes is currently President of EnglishUSA and U.S. Head of Operations for EC English Language Centers. In this role, in addition to overseeing accreditation, licensing, and internal policy and procedures, she also works with U.S. Senate directors and directors of study to ensure academic quality and consistency between EC language schools. Haviva has worked in the field for 20 years and has served on EnglishUSA board in her advocacy role for 2015-2017 and is currently an asset commissioner. All right, let's dive into the episode. Hello and welcome to Education and Empowerment Podcast. This morning we have two extremely inspirational leaders in higher education and English language industry. I'm so honored to welcome you both to our show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
That's really amazing. And just to get us started, I was wondering if you don't mind sharing how you got in higher education.
Cheryl, you want to go first?
Okay, I'll go first. My name is Cheryl Delk-Le Good. I'm the Executive Director for EnglishUSA. And I got into higher ed more years ago than I like to admit, but about 30 years ago. And I intended to get my master's in French and continue on with French language and literature. But I fell in love with teaching language and pursued my English as a second language teaching degree and worked at a couple institutions, Western Michigan University and then Georgia State University in different programs, and then got a lot of leadership experience through activities in different associations, and that brought me to the association world about 8 years ago. But I do miss my colleagues in academia, but fortunately I see them all the time at our events.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Haviva?
Yeah, I had a very different path than Cheryl, actually. I'm more in the private language world side of this kind of area. And I got my start actually as a teacher in China. I got my certification to teach and headed off to China many years ago. I'm not going to say how many. I don't want to date myself. But yeah, and I taught in China and I loved it. And I was given the opportunity to hop to the other side and do administration. Actually, for the program that I was teaching for, needed someone to do recruitment and teacher training. And that sounded really exciting to me as much as I did love my experience in China. So I hopped over to the other side and have just found myself I just kind of kept getting deeper and deeper. It was all very organic, but pretty exciting. And I've led myself. So now I'm at English USA as the president. And I had actually served a term previously as on the advocacy stream. Board was set up a little bit differently then, but it really got me excited to see more aspects and talk to people in different kinds of situations in private language learning and English language programs. And so now I'm at EC, English Language Centers, and I'm the head of operations. I was doing compliance, working with reaccreditation and stuff like that beforehand, but it's been a really exciting journey and kind of a wild one. But when you look back on it, I guess it all makes sense. It just kind of happened. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I think, as we sort of dive into the 21st century and, the whole globalization, knowing English language becomes, extremely important. So, whether you are in Canada or UK or US or, whatever that country is, there's always this need to have, a little bit more structure and understanding of, where the industry is going. And I'm really happy to discuss these, trends that are happening in this field today with you. And I was wondering if you can elaborate on the importance of discussing, English language learning trends throughout, United States. Why is it important for us as leaders to have this discussion? What are maybe some of the current things that you are seeing and maybe upcoming things that you are seeing that you can share? Cheryl, if you'd like to start, and then maybe, Haviva, you can sort of help us on the private sector as well. That would be great.
Okay, so yeah, Haviva and I speak frequently with the board, but the trends in the industry right now, everything related to advocacy, recruitment, and then even down to individual budgets and individual strategies. Without the data, it's very difficult to support decisions in the future at the macro level, at an association level and also at the industry level. So in events that I attend, and also English USA members, our global competitors are present, right? We certainly learn from each other, and what we've learned even more so in the past couple of years coming out of COVID is that the data that is collected, with the individual markets and then globally, it's just so important to have access to that data. But in order to get that data, your members have to be willing to provide that data. Right now, as far as the trends, that helps inform where certain programs might go to market, but also the types of programs that prospective students are looking for. I'll probably talk about another initiative in just a little bit, but Haviva?
Yeah. I think what Cheryl's saying is, for us as membership programs, we are always kind of sticking our fingers up in the air and seeing which way the wind blows. And that's not a very effective way to do any kind of planning and to better serve your students and as an association to serve your industry. And so for us, understanding the trends, having the numbers, knowing the data enables us to go out and do things that are very productive, efficient, and focused. And that starts everywhere, at the macro level, as Cheryl's saying, for the association, but it goes down to the micro level with budgets and, how I decide where our sales team is going to go and where they're going to put their efforts, and how I'm going to advocate for my program. What embassies do I need to speak to talk about visa denials? What markets do I need to enter? What do students want? What can I provide program-wise that I know students are going to be interested in? And all of that comes to the data and understanding those trends. If you don't have that information, it's really hard. I think it's interesting, during COVID, there was a lot of data that was coming out, and people were talking about those numbers. And I think it's made us realize, coming out of COVID, that's really powerful tool. And if we don't have that, it makes it very difficult for us to determine what any kind of next steps will be, both on an association level, but also on an individual programmatic and an institutional level.
That's great. That's great. I think, Cheryl, you mentioned something, very important, which is, the events that, English USA conducts and, other industry, leaders attend to. They are also attended by, as you said, competitors from, different countries like, maybe UK and New Zealand and Canada. How would you say these trends that you're seeing in the US compare to the ones in these countries? Are you seeing the same trends or the trends are completely different?
Well, I think all markets are looking up, but the challenges remain pretty similar. And I know Haviva can speak a little bit more to this, but for example, housing is an incredible challenge for all markets right now. The homestay market has shifted and shrunk, and we're all competing for some of the same resources. I mean, obviously different location, but affordability is certainly a common challenge. It's important also to note that so many of our other competitive markets have a national, international strategy. And the US, although there have been hints at this, last year there was a joint statement put out by multiple government agencies.
Mhm.
But I was thinking about it coming into the meeting today. We're almost in 2023, and
Right.
that joint statement came out in 2021,
Mhm.
July. So I think it's very important for associations like English USA to stay on top of the successes and the challenges when it comes to the national international strategy, because that is an advantage that some of the other markets have
Mhm.
in full support, or a lot of support from their government. And I'm going to end optimistically later on some support that we've had, but for now I'll let Haviva add to that.
Yeah, I mean,
Beautiful.
I'd say like right now in the US, we're looking at 50-60% of where we were at 2019. That's kind of the standard across, if you speak to programs, it's kind of where everybody is. And I think exactly what Cheryl's saying, the trends are the same, are similar, but
Right.
different markets pose different problems, and different times pose different problems and it is as much as a month can make a difference. You look at inflation, and that's a problem everywhere, but the
Right.
strength of the dollar is an added challenge for our students. It's really nice for me to go to Europe and travel, but that puts a really big strain on our Japanese market, for example, where
Mhm.
courses suddenly cost twice as much as they did before. So
Right.
you always have to kind of look at all of those trends very individually, but they are universal. So everybody is dealing with issues of economics. Everybody is struggling with what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, and everybody is having housing issues. The housing market has fluctuated and changed. I look at our schools in Dublin. There physically aren't any beds for anybody. Like, people want to come, but there are no beds for them. And we look at challenges here in the US specifically, we don't have a work market. Students can't come and work. So you're talking about a course that's costing you double, and you don't even have the ability to get a part-time job to help subsidize that in any way or to be productive. So I think, we all have similar challenges, but they're very unique country to country, and they do sort of how we handle them and how we deal with them will change depending on where you are. And I think the US is in a very unique spot as we sort of try and crawl out of the pandemic.
Right.
Things before the pandemic were challenging. We had some
Mhm.
issues, and I think, as Cheryl mentioned, one of our number one challenges is we don't have a national strategy. Getting all 50 states on the same page isn't necessarily where we're going to be. So we have to look at it differently and think about how to approach our own unique challenges in a unique way.
Right. That's great. And, as we dive into, from macro maybe to
Mm.
local or to micro, so suppose I'm a school or I'm an administrator at a, English language school. Where do I find these types of trends? And why is it important for me to keep up with them? Is it going to do any good to me? Could you maybe share your 2 cents on, where these resources are available and, why should, anyone keep up with them?
I'll kick that off, starting from sort of the institutional level, what we're looking at EC, and kind of how we approach that currently. And I'd say, that is the biggest challenge. We get a lot of numbers from a lot of different places that
Right.
don't always, you have to kind of piece it all together to see what your particular situation might be. So there's the NAFSA economic tool, there's the Open Doors survey, and there's CVIS by the numbers are sort of the three sort of main things that give us information. But each one of those gives us different bits of the information.
Right.
And I think, having English USA, and Cheryl's going to talk a little bit about some of the efforts that English USA is making in this stride, and to put ourselves onto that list of where data comes from. But, right now you go to an English USA conference, you go to the stakeholders conference, for example, and you get to hear all this information and you get to talk to people and that's another way of collecting that information and getting it a little more tailored towards what the English language program needs are. There's a ton of info out there, I guess is the point, but it's all kind of scattered, and you have to put it
Mm,
together in a way that makes sense for your program, which
right.
doesn't help us as a, English language industry. It makes that very challenging. And so as an association,
Right.
English USA has taken some pretty exciting steps to kind of help hone that in for English language programs. And I'll let Cheryl sort of talk a little bit about that more.
Yeah,
Wow.
thanks, Haviva. So yeah, I agree with what Haviva was saying on the multiple sources, and I think you had mentioned timeline for a different question, but it's also the timing of when that data is collected. To reference the NAFSA economic tool, I mean, we were, pretty happy this year that NAFSA actually came out with an economic tool specifically connected to English language programs. Now that tool's not perfect yet, but
Hmm.
there are attempts and acknowledgement that English language programs on their own also add significantly to the economic success in the US. But an exciting development that I've been hinting at the whole phone call, we have an award from the Department of Commerce International Trade Administration. It's called the Market Development Cooperator Program. And
Beautiful.
there are limited numbers of these that are issued each year. I believe there was a break during the pandemic, but this is an acknowledgement of all different types of exports. So in addition to travel and tourism boards in Louisiana and a
Mm,
China education economic connection, we English USA received one as well, which, up to $300,000, but it's a cooperator agreement. So the partnership is between a strong one between the association and, in this case, Department of Commerce, International Trade Administration, United States Commercial Services
mm,
Service. And what did we identify right away? What we've been talking about is
right.
that we need additional data to position ourselves in the apples to apples comparison
Right.
around the world, to ensure that all of the students coming to the US to study, and those that are within the US to study
Hmm.
English, are counted. And I think that other markets have done a much better job with this, because data it takes money to do that. So
True.
we are fortunate. We're teaming up with Bernard, who has also worked with Canada, UK, and Australia. In addition to doing apples to apples, they very much understand the markets. So this collection will begin in the early 2023, and it is meant to complement Open Doors. It is not meant to compete with Open Doors. And then this way, we have the information that our government needs, but we also get information that our constituents need. It's the
Mm,
channels the students come to the United States through. Juniors students have rarely, if ever, been counted in some of that data in the past. So it's a big project, but we're excited about it. And we know we have plans, additional initiatives that what is garnered from the data will help programs make even better decisions. I had not a difficult conversation, but a very honest conversation last week with some programs and some educational advisors down in Colombia. Colombia is a
mm,
very hot market right now. Affordability wise, time wise, two things that we've already mentioned, does not make Colombia the perfect market for some of our constituents in the US. It's not the right market because the price point is
right.
not there. So I think, we're just talking more openly now. We're managing expectations, and we hope to do that even more effectively with these initiatives.
I'd just say also, just to tag on to that, I think EC has schools in Canada, the UK, and Malta, and all these other places. So I see it firsthand what Cheryl's talking about. When I sit down at a meeting with the other heads of operations, they are able to bring information to the table to have conversations that I can't have, that I'm trying to piece together. And I have some bits and pieces of it, but I can't speak as clearly as, say, my Canadian colleagues can about what's happening in their market. And so this is super exciting. As Cheryl mentioned, we're using Bernard, and Canada uses Bernard. I have experience with that. So I think, some programs may look at this and say, like, I don't know, is this really necessary?
Right.
How important is this to us? And I can tell you, as somebody who has sat at the table and had conversations with people who have this information, it is so valuable and it is so important, and it can help drive so much decision making on a programmatic and institutional level, but it can also help strengthen what English USA can do for its membership institutions and for ELPs across the United States.
Right.
You have this information, and then English USA can talk about advocacy from a much stronger perspective. We can bring people to the table at conferences who we know trending markets and industries, and have those honest conversations that Cheryl's talking about. How do we find that information? First, we have to gather it this way, and then we can sit down and decide what to do with it. And I think that's super exciting, and it's a great place for us to be, both as an association, but also as an institution. It really excites me of what's coming down the road.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think one of the things that you mentioned, which is basically the whole, aspect of advocacy and sort of looking at the whole, bigger trend of, going after international students. I'm sure a lot of the school, like, both private and public, and despite your entity, you are going after international students, right? You're putting a lot of resources to ensure that, there's continuous recruitment and retention of international students. So if I'm a, school administrator, so to speak, or I'm a professional working in this field, would you maybe describe some of the ways that, the, government policy could be influenced to welcome more international students and to make, US a little bit more competitive compared to the other countries that you mentioned?
Yeah, I can start. Haviva and I have known each other for a long time, so she'll definitely be the cheerleader on the individual level. On the association level, English USA has a committee, the
Right.
committee, an external relations committee, and we try to help the individuals of our association have a voice in that larger international community. One of the things that we most recently compiled was a list of 5 recommendations to at least three of the government agencies. They're gentle reminders. As an English language program industry, don't want to get lost in the bigger international education advocacy work. At the same time, we are part of that, but we have some unique issues. And one is a perception that student visas are being denied. There's an uptick in denials due to an applicant requesting, for an English language program. But we know that applying to an English language program, attendance at an English language program, any English language program that's accredited and certified, is a reason to get a student visa. So we are reminding Department of State Consular Affairs of that. Another one is through Department of Homeland Security. The CVIT by the numbers data that Haviva mentioned earlier is helpful data. I mean, it comes out kind of every 3 months ish, but we need Homeland Security and CVIP to include more specific data about the language training visas, because that would be more useful, again,
Exactly.
to figuring out markets. We also have been, in sessions with government officials, we get reminded about exit or overstay rates. And we're curious, that data must exist. So perhaps the data that we receive to better as DSOs and PDSOs help the process is to include country and education level data to help schools be more aware and to strengthen their role. And lastly, Haviva hinted at this, work rights for language programs to, all students beyond those that are on campuses, which is how it works now, but also to address the state level policies and such, we are asking Department of Commerce as well, hey, the Study States Consortia, it's a great idea to bring Study Wisconsin, Study Florida, Study Illinois, but we need a Study States Consortia in all states, right?
Exactly.
Not just 32 of the 50, and these are all volunteer, leadership based. It's such a challenge. So we so appreciate what Commerce has done over the years with those, but we need more. And this is all in, I hope the connection is clear, and this is all in underlying the advocacy efforts. But I know you asked specifically about a language program administrator. So those are those big pieces that we provide. And then Haviva has some ideas too at the.
Yeah,
Curious to learn from Haviva. Yes.
I mean, this is, as I said, I sat in the advocacy stream a few years ago before becoming president and on the board. And I just advocacy. Like, I can't say it enough. And I even think, like, I'm in Boston, I'm preaching to the choir when I go to speak to these people, but I'm not at the top of their list. Like, they agree with me, but they may not necessarily remember who I am or that I play a part and I play a role in the economics of Massachusetts and Boston. So it's important that even if you have a government or a state that's behind you, that you're getting out there and that you're actually advocating for your program, that you're becoming part of the community and really making people aware of what your institution does to contribute to what's happening in your city and state and things like that. So I think, as administrators, as people on the ground in the program, you're seeing it firsthand. You're there, having these conversations, submitting things, for example, to NAFSA's IssueNet and you don't have to be a member of NAFSA to do that, making sure that you're letting them know about trends so that they can then advocate on language programs' behalf and going in and making appointments. And you'll speak to a staffer, but that's okay. And a lot of times those staffers have had international experiences and get really excited to hear about what we're doing. They don't even know it exists. Most Americans see it from the other side, right? They see it from I went and studied in France for a semester, or I did, had this cool experience. And this sort of light bulb can go off for a lot of people of, oh my God, like, there are people coming here. I want to meet those people. I want to understand them. I want to support what your organization and your institution does. So I think sometimes a little helpless from the administrator on the ground. So many things to deal with in a day. Like, the thought of advocacy, I think sometimes for people is kind of overwhelming, and it's at the bottom of the list. And it's the thing that, oh, well, somebody else will do that, but nobody else is going to do that for you. And so we do really have to take all the data, all the information that we have, both on a greater level, but also on a very personal level of what's happening in your institution, and bring that forward and make sure people hear what is happening so that we can make it a better situation. And I say that also not just about the negative things, like it's not just about the visa denials, and it's not just about the hardships that your students have. It's about the successes that your program has. It's about going to that, community center once a week and feeding the homeless, and that your institution is become part of that community. It's about the students who go on to university from our language programs and successfully complete PhD programs and contribute to science and economics and all these things that are happening. All those successes have to be shared, as well as the challenges, so people understand really where we're coming from and what we're doing.
That's fantastic.
Could I add one more?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was gonna.
Well, she mentioned being in Boston. Well, I'm in the great state of Georgia, and at the time that this is being recorded, we have yet another election tomorrow. So, those individual vote. I know that there's some hesitation about speaking on behalf of your program or institution or campus when it comes to a particular take action or advocacy effort. At the end of the day, for the most, I'm not saying it, you're an individual citizen of an individual state or city or municipality. It's my plug to get out the vote, and to also to vote based on your own personal beliefs as well. And most of us got into this field because we live it and love it and breathe it.
Yeah.
I think you made a great segue to my next question, which is, obviously, when you look at, English language, industry, you learn that it's not only, the schools, the administrators, the association. I think the other sort of segment to that is the teachers, the educators, the service providers. I was wondering if you both could share your thoughts around how do these types of stakeholders can influence or can, provide better programming, or how do they empower, the industry and maybe the beneficiaries of this industry? That'd be great to learn.
I think I can start with that. I mean, as the biggest supporter of English USA, English USA, we take pride in, a lot of things that we've been talking about today are about the board and the committee and the work of the association at a advocacy level and with data, numbers and such. But an important part of what we do is, or who we are is a community. And for the
Right.
past at least 8 years since I've been in the position, we've really worked toward ensuring that the teachers and the staff beyond the administrators feel part of that community. So the most basic issue is that they are part of the community so they can engage with the online forums and such. But we also make an effort to include activities every month that are not recruitment or marketing or evaluation focus, but rather sessions. I often refer to them as members serving members, but it's, teachers delivering webinars on teacher related topics. We have something called Zoom arounds that are informal. And if a hot topic comes up in the community and it feels like we should have a conversation, I mean, there's the beauty of the virtual environment, right? So, a week later, we plan an hour where it's not content, subject matter, expertise delivered, but it's 10 to 15 people getting together, all of whom had the same question and chatting it out. We don't record it or anything like that. And then we also are trying to make sure that there is a practitioner teacher type on our board, because I think that helps, bring perspective to the big picture. And we have a nominations drive happening right now. And one important aspect that came out of a meeting last week was you get out of, by joining an association and meeting others in the community. I mean, you just learn so much. So that's an important part of being a teacher, is having a bigger picture.
Yeah, I think English USA does a great job of building a bigger community for people. I always see this with my teams. We have 5 locations in the US, and they can become very isolated in their own world, and sort of their problems feel like just their problems and their issues. We're talking about these global trends, about housing issues, about visa issues, about student programming, and it can feel very alone. And I think what English USA does an amazing job of is create that community for people and allow people to reach out in a very safe place, and have those conversations. And as Cheryl mentioned, the Zoom rounds and the webinars and things like that, those have been great additions since COVID. And I think that's something that we've really embraced and has, I think, helped the industry as a whole getting more into technology and utilizing it better. But also, there used to be the old school listserv, which is now through the website, the Engage, English USA Engage. And it's an opportunity for people just to throw up questions or things that are happening, or even just share cool things that worked in their school and share that with people and help get people on board, understand better what's happening in the industry. And I really push my teams, once you're a member, everyone on your team can participate. There's no limit there. And so that does include, as Cheryl said, teachers. It's not just limited to administrators or school directors. So I really push my teams personally to join and to participate, because I don't want them to feel lonely. I don't want them to feel like those problems are just their problems. And I bring those things to my conversations with them, and I want them to bring those things to me as well. As an administrator, it helps me to hear like, oh, I was on this webinar and I spoke to 6 other people, and they all tried that thing that we said we were nervous to try, and it seems like it's working for them. So maybe we should try it. Maybe we should give it a whirl. And it provides kind of that informal anecdotal data that we all need as well, and that comfort space. So as Cheryl mentioned, talk about it as a board. There's the webinars and the Zoom rounds. There's also the stakeholders conference, which I mentioned before, and
Hmm.
then the PDC, which is coming up as a virtual conference, and that covers all aspects of the English language programming world. So it's got stuff about recruitment, it's got stuff about academics, it's got stuff about orientations. I've been to some of my favorite presentations have been at the English USA Professional Development Conference in the past. And I really think that as a there's a lot of conferences, there's a lot of really expensive things out there, and there are great places to spend your money, but we all have to be honest about what we
Mm.
have and what we can do. And I think English USA has done a great job at providing a lot of really amazing resources at a very comfortable expense for people, and really opening it up in a way that everybody can participate in some way at your
Hmm.
institution, whether it's at a higher paying event like a stakeholders conference or the
Right.
PDC, or it's on a free membership, member to member Zoom around level, like that all. And USA English USA Engage, like all of that stuff is there, and it covers the spectrum, and really provides a lot of great opportunity for individuals on a school level.
Yeah. I mean, both of you are really inspirational, and I had a chance and pleasure and honor to meet you, in person and learn from you. And, one thing that really stands out is, the whole leadership aspect here, because something that you mentioned again, encouraging your, team to take, next step, right? Don't be in the comfort zone, take a step forward, right? Learn what's happening. It's a soft kick, so to speak, to get them thinking in the right direction is so powerful. In my visit last week in Canada, I learned, how much there is this crown mindset of, if X is doing, we'll do it as well type of. And certainly I would say that, English USA has a very strong leadership and presence in shaping, the future of English language, industry. And I think, this is some of the things that we learned, during COVID is, ability to network and collaborate with, each other to help other, program providers or institutions, private institutions to take advantage of, the housing resources that, we were providing. So I wanted to kind of engage and maybe, for the benefit of our listeners out there, gain your understanding of, from your perspective in the industry. Both of you represent very strong, obviously, leadership positions. How has, housing demand changed? I mean, do you see administrators advocating for more homestay options, or do you see, schools and administrators, vouching for, residence options, or maybe there's a new model that they, asking? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I can kick that off. I think, from an institutional level, but also seeing it with my peers at English USA and people I speak to, the housing market has changed a lot. And I think you have to start with some of the changes that have happened within the US, just sort of in general with housing. And that is, more people are working from home. Extra space isn't as readily available as it was before. A lot of college students post-college have moved back home, so empty rooms aren't empty anymore.
Mhm.
And so the space itself has changed. I think you have to go into the market understanding that and knowing that that's different, right? And I think there are less affordable options out there as a whole. So when you're
Mm.
going into the market and you're looking for things, it's a lot more challenging as an institution to find those spaces. So that's sort of the first part. The second part is what has changed with the students. And I think the students have changed a little bit. We talk about affordability, and I think
Mhm.
when it comes to affordability, a homestay is always kind of the first option. But on top of affordability, there is a little bit of a sense of sort of the concierge service that
Right.
people want. And, living with a family is not, I mean, they take care of you, but it's not the concierge service that you would get at a hotel, right?
True.
And so when we're looking at the old school housing, and you can even see this if you go to any college campus these days and look at the dorms that they're building on these
Mhm.
campus, like I can't believe the places that people, I mean, when I went to visit colleges, you could stick your arms out two sides and you could touch both walls, and they were like, 4 people will live in this room,
Exactly.
and it was sort of like, that's kind of what it was. You had your shower caddy and you walked down the hall and you lived in a small space, and it was that experience. That is not the experience that students are having anymore. And if you get into one of those dorms, I think you feel like, you lost that housing, you lost that housing lottery. And so I think our students come with the same expectations. They don't want to be crowded in. They want to be comfortable. They want a place that understands what their needs are, that can help them, when they struggle to take the bus to school, when they have to figure out the subway system, when they want food delivered and it wants to, come to their room easily and things like that. So I think there is a little bit of a push and pull that's happening in the industry, where like we want things to be affordable, but our standards are also a little bit higher than what we might be able to afford. So I think that's sort of a tricky place to be. And I think everybody's having very different conversations than we were having before. And this has actually been a place where I think these Zoom arounds and conversations and engage have been super helpful for people, because I'm able to talk. We're all in that same boat. Like, we're competitors, but at the same time, we're all sitting in the same city trying to get these students, trying to figure it all out. And I think it's an interesting and different market than it was before. I think we're all experiencing that. Yeah.
That's great. Cheryl?
I wanted to add a piece from I guess I'm using that word too often to hit a macro level, but because I'm not dealing on an individual base, on an individual program basis, but watching my nieces and nephews and the kids of my friends who are all, right at this college age now, I want to say it saddens me a little bit, because I mean, it's just different. It's a sign of, just getting older also. But that language learning type environment, I think we also have to manage the expectations there. I mean, the residence halls that Haviva is talking about, I know exactly what you're talking about, because my best friend's son is in one now where he only has to share a bathroom with one other, and then there's 4, but they all have their own rooms. There are doors that close, and that's it. And the example that you gave, Haviva, of getting help to take the bus or to do that or to that, with some of the situations, I'm talking about these on-campus situations, it doesn't even allow for a language learner to run into anybody to say, hey, where do I go stand? Where do I go to get? So there's, I know that many institutions and private programs they add so much by adding the social aspects. And so I don't want to, discount what programs do to assist with that. But that, I get concerned sometimes that just the structure of how people live, has changed that interaction for language learning and such. But I don't want to end on a negative note, though.
No, it's all about community. I think that's the important part there, is that we work so hard in our institutions to create that community for students, and we want them to walk out the door and still have that community experience. And I think some of it from us is like managing those expectations, but also you don't know what you don't know. Like, you think that you want this thing and that this is the most important thing, when in actuality, we know from experience, and I think we have to use that position of knowledge to help someone understand, listen, I know you're hesitant about this, and this seems like maybe not the greatest option for you, but let me explain to you and let me help you understand why it is going to be a really great experience for you, and why, okay, it's not, movie style, 2 parents, a kid and a dog, and, 2 kids and a dog and a picket fence and all that stuff. But this lovely older couple that, is living alone and had 3 kids in the house and now just wants to take care of somebody and have company, like, they're going to be an amazing host for you. They're going to teach you language and communicate with you and have dinner with you every night so that you can actually build up your language skills and understand the culture a little bit better. And they're going to invite you to Thanksgiving dinner, and they're going to do those things for you. And I think there's a lot of fear around that.
Mm.
And it's sort of partly our job to help students understand the value of some of these experiences and why some of these housing options may seem scary or not like what you want or not the service that you think you should be getting. But in actuality, this is really going to be a great community for you. And this is going to extend the experience that you're having in your school out into the world, which is what you came for, right? You didn't
Right.
come just to sit in the classroom, because the
Mhm.
classroom is great, but you really can do that at home. Right? You can learn the language, but you need to come in and experience the culture and the language together. And that's something that I think housing, that's a piece we have to remind people that housing
Mhm.
provides and is important for.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And, as we, start sort of, wrapping up our episode, I think I wanted to, ensure that our listeners left with a better understanding of the whole can do, mindset. So what can we do together today, as an industry, as, group of community and stakeholders to prepare for the better future for this industry and for, what we are dealing with. So if you could respectively share your thoughts, that'd be ideal.
Oh, that's a big one. Uh, well, a lot of, several of the items or points that we talked about today, but I think being informed,
Mhm.
and we talked about several ways and things that we're doing as an association to help people be informed, but you individually, you also need to help yourself there. So being informed on the hot topics, in the industry, being part of a community that is also endeavoring to stay informed and such, and then you can learn from each other that way. The eternal optimist in me is, last piece of advice, I guess, is to stay optimistic, because
Right.
the desire to come to the United States and study, live with a family, et cetera, pursue a professional, personal, or academic goal, that didn't go anywhere. It's still there. So I think we
Mm.
need to really stay optimistic for the future, and don't abandon your community and the information, because it's there to
Mm.
help you stay optimistic. So.
Yeah, I agree with everything Cheryl said. I think you hit that nail on the head. The only other thing I would say is, while it's important to be informed, it's also important to be curious and to step outside a little bit of the world you're in to help understand your world a little bit better. I think you do have to understand what's happening around you and what's happening on the bigger picture. And I think it's important to ask questions and put yourself out there. Maybe it's a little bit of stepping outside of your own sort of comfort zone of
Right.
what your program does and what you've always done, and sort of being curious to see what else is out there, what else might work, what else can happen. We expect that of our students. And so I always
Mm.
think, like, the things that we expect of our students, we should also kind of be expecting of ourselves a little bit. Be
Mm.
curious, to be informed, to really challenge yourself, to get out there and ask those questions, and also be a part of that community. And it's funny, you're talking about how leaders in the community, I didn't start here, and I do have a little bit of imposter syndrome sometimes when I
Mm.
talk about it. I mean, I realize how long I've been in this industry and how much experience I've had, and I still learn new things every
Mm.
day. And being part of the English USA board is an amazing experience, and being part of the English USA community has really opened me up into seeing so much more than just the positions that I've held, or the schools that I've worked for. And so broadening that out has been really professionally, but also very personal. It's been a great development for me, and I'm so appreciative of being able to have that experience. And the more people I can bring into that community, the better. And I think, as Cheryl said, it's that optimism that what we do is important, and that hasn't changed. How we do it will change a little bit, but that passion that we all had that got us here, it's there. And we just need to keep kind of pushing forward for it.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I'm actually ready to take the challenge and, be the first one, so to speak, to go out and take the next, action. If, our podcast listeners, feeling the same as I am, what is the right resource for me to go and check out if I wanted to, become a member of English USA, if I wanted to learn, more about the English, and as you share that, if you don't mind, maybe, including your 2 cents on why is it important for a school or for an administrator or for educators working in this field to be part of English USA, and what kind of support they will get, as they do that. I think that'd be great to learn from you.
Well, thanks for allowing us to do this. This is great. But EnglishUSA.org, that's our website, and there's information there about upcoming events. And Haviva mentioned the Professional Development Conference, which is in February. So you can see information about that and find out information about membership. There is a benefits page there that certainly one could read, but I'm going to repeat myself a little bit here. You'll see under the member directory, you'll see that we are 226 programs and growing strong. We had 3 more just last week. And the membership is a institutional program membership. It's not an individual membership. So a lot of the associations in our circle are individual memberships, and they're expensive. This one is at the program level, and everybody in the program is a member. So if you are not that decision maker, give me a call or email, and I can help provide you with points for your decision maker. If you are the decision maker, please look at the peers in your state, see who else is involved and is a member, and they're our best resource. I can put you in touch with folks and talk to them and find out the benefits of being a member. So
yeah, the English USA community is not difficult to find, and I'd say we're all very open to conversations. All the board members are listed on the website and their programs that they're at, and finding people and asking them to talk about why they serve on the board and why their institution is a member. We're all very open to that, and I'd say, check it out and give us a ring, and we're happy to talk to you about it. I do think English USA is a fantastic resource, and I say that not just as the president, but as somebody who's been a member. And I've worked at a couple institutions, and both those institutions have been members. Actually, all the institutions that I have worked at have been members of English USA, and always valued that experience. So I would say, reach out, as Cheryl said, and check out the website and reach out to any of us. And, on an institutional level, I'd love you to check out EC, and that's ecenglish.com. Very simple. And like I said, all of our contact information is on there. So don't hesitate to reach out, and, LinkedIn or whatever. I'm always happy to talk to people about the experience and push it forward. So,
and if I could add to, our associates, we have just over 20 associates, and these are service providers that offer different types of programs or services to globally, but also information-wise to our members. And so I would like just personally right now to thank you and Forstay for allowing us to do this, because it's this type of relationship and exchange that kind of highlights the connections between associates and member programs. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And I wanted to, mention to our podcast listeners that Forstay is a member, associate member, and we have been really lucky and learned so much from, the membership and the conferences that we attended, and, the connections that we made are truly transformational, and I'm looking forward to continuing for many more. Thank you so much for, Cheryl and Haviva, for sharing your thoughts. You are truly both very inspirational, and your insights are very, very useful. And I hope that this conversation will allow our podcast listeners to be better in the day-to-day work and learn about the resources available, for them. I will include, your contact information in our show notes. And for our podcast listeners, if you are curious to have more, episodes, check out podcast.forstay.com so you never miss an episode. Or if you want to learn about what Forstay does, check us out at about.forstay.com. Until our next episode, Haviva and Cheryl, you made my day. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank
That's
you.
great.
Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Education and Empowerment Podcast. This show is brought to you by Forstay, a SaaS-enabled online booking marketplace for student and intern housing. Forstay provides turnkey, all-in-one cloud-based accommodation software solutions for colleges, universities, and organizations. Learn more at offcampus.forstay.com and landlords.forstay.com.